The art of communication is completely dead, or at least on life support. Is it possible for it to be revived? Part 1. The problem. The purpose of communication among the human species is to come to a meeting of the minds and to move forward in agreement and harmony with a common understanding between two or more people. At least that's what I've always strived to accomplish in all that I have communicated with others, verbally, in person, or by any other means, either written or in video form. But it's become glaringly apparent that most people in this world don't view communication in that way. And the past couple of months of my life have reinforced this observation to me over and over again. It's no longer about a meeting of the minds and seeking truth or understanding. It's become some odd form of imposing your opinion on others and rejecting any challenge to those opinions, which leads to the creation of more and more dissension in our world, followed by anger, stagnation, regression, alienation, decay, and the maintaining of an abhorrent status quo. So, what is the real problem, and is there an actual remedy? As many of us have experienced firsthand, especially over the last 3 years, our ability to communicate the truth about what is really going on in our world with friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, etc., has been frustratingly futile. Most people, it seems, are completely reticent to hearing anything contrary to their carefully crafted perception of reality. On top of that, we have censorship of these messages at an all-time high too, which only adds to our struggle. And sadly, most people's perception these days has been programmed into their minds by the default they have lazily chosen, like the majority of the population. They have decided to believe whatever it is their TVs and preferred authority figures have told them to believe without question. They don't actually think for themselves. They just mindlessly believe and repeat what they have heard someone else say. And if you come with information contrary to what complete strangers have told them to believe, you're essentially attempting to do the impossible and are thus their new enemy. Does this sound like a divide and conquer tactic? We all know it. We've all experienced it. People have walls up. People have what is now referred to as my truth, and most refuse to be convinced otherwise. But it is tearing apart the very fabric of society, because while humanity is essentially moving forward in tens of thousands of different directions, our common enemy is moving and hurting us all in unison in one direction towards their ultimate common goal, the complete control over our lives and the depopulation of our species to what is considered a manageable level for the predator class. That level, which they once had carved in stone for 40 years in Elberton, Georgia, is 500 million people worldwide, meaning more than 7 billion need to be eliminated via one method or another. The very first thing it says at the top of my primary website is, "Truth is all that matters." It also links to a blog article of the same title I wrote just over 3 years ago. And if you fully understand and strive to align your life with natural law, you implicitly understand this to be true. Because believing in and acting on any information or opinion which does not align with natural law, otherwise known as all objective truth, will most likely result in negative consequences being borne by either the initiator of that action or other innocent victims. This is the way the world works. But so many are completely oblivious to this well-hidden truth, and that is why there is so much chaos in the world today. Looking back over the past 3 years especially, I can see clearly that it is the breakdown in communication which has been the primary source of my depression over and over again. But it's not my ability to communicate or discern that I have seen as the problem, because I am told over and over that I am an excellent communicator of worthy ideas and knowledge by those whose minds are open to receiving alternative information to the official narrative of illegitimate authorities. So I can only come to the logical conclusion as to the true root of our problems in society and civilization today. And that is that most people have lost the ability to comprehend or understand what others are attempting to communicate, or they simply don't want to. Part 2. A sudden shift in clarity. My very first revelation to this unfortunate reality of the current human condition hit me like a thunderbolt well over a decade ago. I don't remember exactly when this conversation took place, but I remember driving in my car as we talked. It had to have been either 2008 or 2009, because I remember I had been doing my initial rabbit hole research for at least 18 months to 2 years by then. I was having a conversation with my little sister about the concept of the Great Awakening and how we have been deceived about pretty much everything our entire lives. Now, to understand her perspective, she is a producer for a major news corporation and works in the belly of the beast at 30 Rockefeller Center in New York City. So she has her own twisted perception of reality and refuses to entertain anything which goes against any narrative coming from what she considers official and trustworthy sources like Reuters, the AP, or all mainstream media. So we were talking about something, and at this point the conversation is vague, but I think it was about vaccination because a friend of hers who was a nurse got in my face about it at one of her parties with the same tired and false eradicating polio and saving lives rhetoric. However, I said something to the effect of, but if I have irrefutable proof about something and try and show someone the error of their thinking, I really think it needs to be done. Her response was, you can't tell people that they don't have a right to their opinion. Wow. And instantly, it all became so clear to me. That simple cultural belief that we are somehow entitled to believe whatever it is we want to believe is the source of most conflict and the root of enormous disorder in our world. Because it stops the process of thinking in its tracks. The mind shuts down when that entitlement is challenged. The ego comes rushing in to protect the fragile emotional state of the individual. And instead of attempting to understand what is being communicated and look at personally held beliefs from a different perspective, there is just an indoctrinated and habitual response based in dogmatic faith and programmed information, which may have absolutely zero connection to objective truth. It's this one conversation that has driven me all these years now, and why I am so fervent in teaching people to understand the incredible power and importance of natural law, along with learning the language arts of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Because it's in understanding and aligning with natural law via the process of critical thinking in which we find the solution to all of the world's problems. Think about it for a moment. If the idea that we are all entitled to our own opinions and beliefs, then what we are essentially saying is that nobody is wrong about anything. We all have our own truth. And that is the most absurd ideology by which to try and operate a well-functioning society, let alone the entire human civilization. And this is exactly what the ruling predator class wants. They want us to be in constant conflict and turmoil. It's exactly why they removed the teaching of critical thinking from all public school curriculum in the Western nations beginning in the early 19th century. Because if the masses couldn't think for themselves nor communicate with one another effectively, they could easily be controlled, manipulated, and ultimately enslaved. Welcome to the 21st century and the agenda for sustainable development, the modern Trojan horse of our demise. We are now living in the logical end of the decades-long plans of our abusers. Every day on social media, I see nothing but obsession on the problems of our world, or egos clashing, and people spewing false rhetoric with absolutely zero grammar or logic to back it up. But they believe they are infallibly correct because they either heard it on TV or from one of their many personally chosen experts or authority figures. They are essentially nothing more than dumb nodes on a computer network, or non-playable characters in a simulated computer game, repeating instruction sets because that's what they have been programmed to do. There is no personal thought or introspection. There is just belief, ego, emotion, and justification based on this false idea of entitlement. That is the world in which we live and the real source of our problems. Virtually no one knows how to communicate effectively because we were never taught the language arts or the art of communication, which derives from understanding them. It is called the trivium, and it must be reinstalled into the minds of mankind if we ever hope to move humanity in the right direction and emancipate ourselves from the chains of slavery caused by our collective ignorance. Most people have absolutely zero idea about the true nature of our reality or the cages into which we were put on the day of our birth when our parents signed our physical bodies and perhaps souls as well over to the Babylon system with their signatures on our birth certificates. As most people go throughout their lives in complete ignorance of this subversive reality by stealing our inherent sovereignty, they have no idea that their energy is being harvested by this predatory group of rulers and other unknown entities who have been using we the people of this world to not only build their empire and ivory towers, but our own prisons in the process. And it's all because we have lost the art of communication, or better yet, it was stolen from us. However, we can reclaim it once we decide we want to. Part 3. The final straw. What ultimately triggered me to sit down and write this blog article was a conversation last week with a neighbor of mine. I had only gone over to put some garbage in her trash can because the city has stolen mine for the egregious crime of daring to place leaves in my own trash bin, and they are holding it hostage until I pay them extortion money. Yes, that is the world in which we live. No logic, no communication, just force and the imposition of will on others who don't comply with arbitrary commands from the illegitimate ruling class and their mindless minions. But I digress. My dog was with me and he roamed into her backyard where she was outside at the moment. I had only planned on taking her trash to the curb and adding my trash to her bin, but we started talking. And I don't even know what we were talking about, but I have been taking care of her home, plants, and 2 cats when she's been out of town for extended periods of time over the past few months. She has offered to pay me for doing so, but I refuse to accept money to do simple favors for a neighbor. I think it's something we should all do as I live my life by all 4 moral maxims of natural law. This falls under the golden rule, and I wouldn't think of accepting money for it. But we somehow got onto the topic, as we have in the past, about the condition of our world and what future is planned for us. And this is where everything started to go south, because she is one of the billions who believe in the idea of my truth and not objective reality. So I tried to explain to her, as I have done on a couple of occasions in the past, that there is no such thing as my truth. There is only the truth. And it is our personal responsibility to seek what that truth is about any topic or subject, whatever it is. Ironically, she's also one of the people in this world who have a decent understanding of how messed up things really are. But in her perspective, we don't have to do anything, and things will miraculously work themselves out. And that's the attitude that frustrates me perhaps more than any other, because it's nothing more than New Age, hopium-induced, false positivity. And that attitude is what creates the incredible amount of apathy, which only feeds more power and energy to the enemy. I can only assume people choose to take this position because then they are off the hook for actually doing anything that will fully ensure that things will work out in our favor. You know, for the first time in recorded history. And I think the most frustrating aspect of the conversation, if you can even call it that, is that I was trying to tell her, as I have before, that she just doesn't understand. But she kept denying that and telling me she does understand, but from her perception of reality. She understands from her chosen truth. But every time I try to explain to her from a perspective which has come from nearly 16 years of deep research and intensive work that her understanding isn't aligned with objective reality, and I try to tell her the documented plans of our looming dystopian future, I'm summarily shut down. My words are stomped on, and I can't even finish a sentence. So, just like the vast majority of people in this world, she doesn't want to understand. Otherwise, she would listen with an open mind and try to comprehend what I am saying. In her mind, she doesn't want or need to hear anything contrary to her belief that the system will come crashing down and, like a phoenix, humanity will miraculously rise again in a world of abundance. But yeah, it's going to happen with no planning or effort on our part at all. Like magic, everything in this world will just somehow be right, and no one will suffer in the process, or many will die. She doesn't seem to care about the consequences borne by others, as long as she's fine. And I can't see that as anything other than pure selfishness, whereas all of my work is based on unconditional selflessness. That's the attitude which has been at the root of my frustration and depression for years now, and the same attitude shared by my own family, and why I have been ostracized. And it's that type of thinking which is pervasive around the world. That, or Trump will save us in 2024, or we just need to fix government, or go back a couple hundred years and start over from there, or whatever personal opinion someone may hold. But none are based in natural law. The art of communication is truly dead. I hardly see any effective communicating going on anywhere these days, and I have experienced it over and over throughout my life, looking back on all things which have gone wrong. Not only was either I or someone else operating in violation of natural law, there was also ineffective communication and no meeting of the minds. Because I only learned any of this information I now share freely with whomever will listen in just the past 15 years of my life. But most have yet to learn and understand the immense power of this knowledge. So I do what I can because I fully understand that this is what people truly need to learn if we ever hope to rise from the ashes of the collapsing civilization and not be fully enslaved by the planned dystopian panopticon or suffer the consequences of the controlled demolition of our economy and way of life. The very idea of individual truth and entitlement have gotten us into this mess, and it's only in understanding the objective reality of our current condition that will cause the uprising and creation of the critical mass. We'll need to emancipate ourselves from the Babylon system and finally render it obsolete once and for all. If we don't all play an active and essential role in creating a new breakaway civilization and move en masse to this new system before it all collapses, we may never have the opportunity ever again, because we will all then be trapped inside a highly regulated and maintained digital prison where every movement and action will be known by our overlords, and any uprising immediately crushed. Part 4. The Poison Pill. Government and statism alone has indoctrinated populations around the world that imposing your will on others is the solution to failed communication. But they're supposedly elected to be diplomats, meaning to engage in the process of diplomacy in resolving problems peacefully and coming to a meeting of the minds. But we can clearly see that things do not work that way in our manufactured reality. As Randolph Bourne wrote, war is the health of the state, and broken communications are part of that construct. So they only tell you that they tried to resolve things before any premeditated attacks. But as we know, they lie about everything. It's all just a show. But that show seeps into the minds of the populations, and they too believe they can now follow the same course as their representatives. So they lie, cheat, steal, and impose their will on others as well, because their subconscious mind has been programmed to do so since birth. But it's all a massive violation of natural law. Every bit of it. And we, as the true creators of this material world and our reality, need to fix this broken paradigm before it destroys us all. The government lies about everything. They create the cognitive dissonance, the normalcy, and confirmation biases, which confuse the minds of millions. And as long as we allow this entity to remain in place and its illegitimate position of power over the people, we will never be free. Never. That final trigger last Monday night was just the last one in a string of misunderstandings and poor communication, which has completely paralyzed my motivation for months now. I'm surprised I'm even able to do all I have done over the past 2 years, given the lack of positive feedback from my work, the petty criticism from those who refuse to actually look at, to understand what I've been proposing, and the backstabbing I've been subject to, let alone just being ignored. All of that negative energy adds up and has a cumulative effect on my psyche. And as an empath who is only trying to help put humanity on the right track moving forward into a much brighter future, I have a very hard time understanding the attacks. Because I'm not attacking anything but the false paradigm from which we should all logically and emotionally want to escape, but don't know how to because there has never been a viable plan to do so. As much as I want to quit sometimes, I know that things will not just work themselves out magically, as so many falsely believe will happen. They don't understand the enemy, their tactics, or their complete disdain for the majority of the human population. When people naively ask, but why would they do that? They don't comprehend that they, the hierarchy enslaving you, hate us. They look at us as nothing more than human resources, and they simply don't need us as resources any longer. We built what they needed us to build, and they have profited immensely off our stolen productivity in the process, and are now buying up the world with that ill-gotten and extreme wealth. They are bringing in an age of transhumanism, artificial intelligence, robotics, and digital identification and currency to control those they allow to remain in a new world order of hyper-feudalism, where there will only be the ultra-wealthy who own everything, including your mind, body, and soul, while the serf class will own nothing. If you don't want that kind of world, especially for your children, it is up to you and everyone else to ensure that it doesn't come to fruition. We all have a part to play in creating and manifesting a new reality in which we are completely free to live life as we choose and to find and fulfill our true potential in life. No one from the top of the pyramidal command and control structure is ever going to just give us that world. It is their greatest fear that we figure this out, unite as one force for good, and break free of their system, leaving them without any power over us at all, ever again. Which is exactly why they have meticulously and purposely destroyed our ability to communicate effectively with one another, and why the world is the way it is today. But we have the conscious choice and ability to change it all. It only takes an open mind to finally listen to all those of us who have been trying to kindly warn the world's populations of what is happening and the true nature of our reality. Part 5. A right or something else? It is a very commonly understood ancient proverb that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that they should be used in the same proportion. But very few actually know how to listen. And this is the most vital part of the communication process. Today we live in a societal system with a population which has been programmed to respond to stimuli emotionally and not to even attempt to understand what is being communicated rationally or logically. What I see is people hearing solely to reply with their opinion or perception of reality, instead of attempting to understand what is being communicated and pondering how it either coincides with their beliefs or contradicts them. And if there is a contradiction, to explain coherently why they believe so while keeping the emotions at bay so as to come to a meeting of the minds. Also, consequently leaving the possibility open that they may just be mistaken and choose to change their mind to align with a new perspective. But Most can't even fathom the idea that they could possibly be wrong or even deceived, because they have chosen or created their truth or perception of reality and believe in their entitled right to maintaining a certain opinion without question or challenge. Can we see the problem now? People have cast off their duty to actually listen to others with the intent of understanding. The ability to communicate effectively with one another is dead, and it was murdered by those who don't want us to be able to do so. I have created videos and written blogs about how this was accomplished, and I have also created videos and blogs about the actual solutions to this pervasive conundrum. But people need to care about learning. They need to be open to changing their opinions. They need to understand that opinions and beliefs are not an entitlement or a right, but in a world of immutable natural laws by which we are all bound, they are a personal responsibility. And to live in a false reality unaligned with objective truth is a recipe for disaster. Eventually, they will act on these false beliefs and they will suffer the consequences of their violations or harm others in the process. When an entire society acts on false beliefs, we get what we went through for the past 3 years, along with every other false belief created by the illegitimate authorities of this world and the controlled media machine that perpetuates these lies on a non-stop 24/7 news cycle. Propaganda has been fully weaponized, and the majority of the world have fallen right into the trap, while those of us who truly understand how the game works are negatively affected by the ignorance of the masses, and they wonder why we are so upset. Part 6. Resolution and a clear vision for a better world. So, what is the remedy? We must begin to listen to understand and break the terrible habit of hearing to respond. I have laid it out in all of my work. It is free for the entire world to see and to acquire. The only cost is to spend time and pay attention to what is being taught. I did it. Many others have done it. It is each and every individual's personal responsibility to do the same if they ever hope to completely reclaim the full capacity of their mind. This is what needs to be done, and the process is actually very simple. The lessons are available to everyone. What we need is a critical mass of people committed to this process, and we can reclaim our power and thus our world. Without reclaiming the ability to think critically and communicate effectively, we will remain on this sinking ship. People will either continue their addiction to hopium and do nothing because they falsely believe that everything will work itself out in the end, or they will believe in the worst and do nothing as Rome burns around them because they are convinced anything they might do is futile. Both of these attitudes are only aiding in our destruction and enslavement. But there is a way out. That way out is our unity in numbers, large enough to exit peacefully. Once we have achieved critical mass, there is nothing the predator class can do to stop us. We are non-violent, and we only want a better world for everyone and everything. We want to restore the natural balance in our world and align with natural law, which is why we have proposed the Natural Law Republic as the replacement for the current system of enslavement and graft. It is a system in which we all just agree to be decent human beings and enable a new societal structure to ensure that our individual sovereignty is honored and respected while maintaining a public service administration to keep the system protected along with a common law court system for the peaceful resolution of all disputes. The solutions are simple and must be so that everyone can understand how society works and is supposed to operate. It is all laid out in the documentation, videos, and proposals, and those who have gotten through all of it unanimously agree that it would most definitely put humanity on the right path and begin the healing process from a lifetime of trauma and abuse from the predator class and their Babylon system of deception and enslavement. I started this article out with a recognition of the purpose of communication, to come to a meeting of the minds and to move forward in agreement and harmony. The very idea of agreeing to disagree is nothing more than a failure in communication, and that failure comes from the result of either one or both of the parties being wrong about what they are attempting to communicate. It's the same idea as my truth, and there is no interest in attempting to come to mutual understanding in this scenario. There is no attempt to apply natural law to the conversation to see if there is a violation somewhere. There is just ego on one or both sides of the exchange, and neither is willing to relent or change their perspective. So again, this breakdown in communication stagnates things. It causes disharmony. Nothing is solved, and everyone is held back from progressing forward. Poor communication is essentially an anchor holding humanity back from what we could and should be as stewards of this world. And this is the common default in societies today. The governments and predatory ruling classes use this to their advantage in all that they do, claiming always that they tried to reason but ultimately had to take action for our own good. Action that always ends up in the imposition of will against others, aggression, theft, imprisonment, grave injury, and even mass death. Is this the kind of world we want? Are we so prideful that we can't accept that we have been fooled? Are we so unwilling to admit fault that we will hold on to false beliefs as though they were invaluable to our lives? What have we become? Why have we become so adamant that none of us could ever be mistaken? Why can't we see that miscommunication and the unwillingness to open our minds to other possibilities is at the very root of societal decay? Generations of social engineering from top-down government think tanks and so-called intelligence agencies have created this world by design. Everything is out of balance, and we are now in the endgame of their generations-long psychological operations against the people of this world. If we don't drop our preconceived notions, beliefs, perceptions, and ideologies programmed into our minds by this predatory class who want nothing more than to control us, along with shedding our egos long enough to actually listen to others who are trying to communicate the reality of our world to you, we are doomed to lose this war on humanity. If, however, people receive this message and realize just how badly we've been lied to and make the conscious decision to open their minds, challenge everything they only thought they knew, and spend the time to pay attention to those who have sacrificed thousands of hours of their own lives to learn and understand this purposely occulted knowledge, we might just have a chance to overcome our pre-planned dystopian future. This is what it's going to take. It's going to take millions to awaken to our reality and unite in a force large enough to walk away into a new system whereby the illegitimate ruling class simply doesn't have the resources to stop us. What this system would look like is explained in the series, Manifesting a New Reality. How this system would be structured to guarantee that all power is fully decentralized in society and held with each sovereign individual is explained in the series, Creating a Natural Law Republic. How we all begin the process of reclaiming our minds is laid out in the foundational video series I created for my YouTube channel named after this blog, Kaizen and the Pursuit of Truth. How we all begin the process of reclaiming our freedom and sovereignty is explained in the video series, The Path to Freedom. An overview of the entirety of this work is explained in a 4-part audio blog series I wrote last year called Emancipation Proclamation 2.022, Building the Breakaway Civilization. So the vision, roadmap, and structure are all available for everyone to see. There should be no excuses or claims of no viable options or solutions, because there is. I have spent tens of thousands of hours of my life to put this information together so that humanity might someday be completely free from oppression and coercion. That is my ultimate goal, and if I succeed in that goal, everybody wins, except for the psychopaths, narcissists, and control freaks of our world. But I need help in attaining that goal because this is about all of us. We all have a part to play in co-creating a better world and in our emancipation from the chains that almost no one realizes are constraining our lives and, more importantly, destroying our future. Even most people in the truth community suffer from the myopia of not seeing the big picture and a way out of this mess as well. I have been imploring people for over 2 years to stop obsessing on the problems and focus on the solutions, But do they listen to me? Do they listen to reason? Do they understand that by talking about the problems, they're only giving more and more power to their manifestation? I don't think they do. So just imagine if the millions of hours now wasted every week that are dedicated to exposing the agenda and talking about what is being done to us, as well as plan for our future, were all directed instead towards talking about natural law, uniting behind an idea that would free all of humanity and restoring common sense and balance in our world. What if the tens of thousands of people talking about the problems shifted their focus on communicating the solutions to their audiences? We could take back our power within months, not years or generations, or God forbid, never. Our entire lives, we have been in a marathon to this ultimate finish line. And at that finish line begins an actual divergence of the road on which our species and natural world are heading. As we approach this finish line, we must understand that we will begin either an entirely new era of freedom and abundance we have never known in our lives, or we will enter an era of complete enslavement and control over them. Which future path do you choose for you and your family? We are now in a sprint to the finish line, and whichever group of people get there first will have their say in our future. We are currently losing the race, but if the right message were to get communicated on a daily basis by a growing number of people, there is no doubt that we would win and secure a safe and bountiful world for not only all of us, but our children and future generations as well. That's exactly what's at stake. And it all comes down to communication. We must stop communicating doom and gloom. We must stop perpetuating the fear porn. We must stop giving our energy into building the prison grid projected onto us by our enemy. We must stop assuming there is no way to defeat them and just hope for survival or a violent revolution to overthrow the existing order. None of that needs to happen. We can do this peacefully and without a single act of violence. All we need to do is to focus on objective reality, reclaim our minds, communicate the solutions to others, and focus on the world we want to create. Then we will get there. What we are communicating on a daily basis is the key to freeing humanity. And once enough people are communicating the correct and positive messages with one another, the rest will begin to understand the power we truly have, and everything will fall into place as it should, as our numbers begin to grow exponentially. In the end, all we have to do is to change our minds and to align with objective truth, and the world will begin to heal.